to the topic.
We will.
Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We are out of the Waisman Center and we cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, but we have friends all over the place. So wherever you are joining us from, you are welcome. Today, I am so totally excited. So we are going to talk about an introduction to autism, mental health, and well-being. And we get to have people that have formed something called an introduction to autism, mental health, and well-being. We know that mental health and wellness is important for all people. And to support mental health and wellness for people with an autism diagnosis, it's important to understand their particular style of thinking and the way their brain handles information, along with the impact of both environmental and other types of trauma. On the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin website is actually a 3-part series. We have 2 of those authors of that series. One is Judy Endow and then Sharon Hammer. Judy is an author, international speaker on a variety of autism-related topics, has written numerous articles and books, including award winners, Learning the Hidden Curriculum, The Odyssey of One Autistic Adult, and Paper Words, and Discovering and Living with My Autism. Sharon Hammer is a mental health and educational consultant and a licensed professional counselor with 20 plus years of experience, which means, of course, she started at 5 years old. Working with children and individuals on the autism spectrum and their family, she is also a partner at Imagine a Child's Capacity. Judy and Sharon, thank you so much for being here today. So why, we have been training people in mental health for years and years and years. We've got therapists, we've got counselors, we've got psychologists. Why did you all feel a need to offer an introduction to autism, mental health, and well-being? I know one is offered for counselors to help them, but then there's this general one to try to help all of us understand more about that intersection. Why did this come about?
I'm giving Judy space to talk first. Do you want me to talk first, Judy?
Go ahead. I thought you were.
Okay. I had done both. Okay. How this came about, the original training we did was about, I want to say 5 years ago at this point. And it was with the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin. And when we did that training, Judy wasn't necessarily a part of it then. I think it was just Lisa Hamey, who's also an author of this training we're talking about today, Ellen Egan, and I put together the first full day training on autism and mental health. And it was really because what we were finding in our own private practices mostly was a lot of information that was incorrect. We had clients coming to us who had been at mental health site after mental health site trying to get treatment for whatever had been going on with them and it not being successful. And at many points, what happens when it is not a successful match, the individual, the autistic person would get blamed or would take the blame for that. And we were really, really struggling with that, struggling with the clients that were coming to us with failed attempt at therapy after failed attempt at therapy. And so we really decided that we needed to get some information out there about the intersection of autism and mental health and autism and mental well-being. And so again, that started about 5 years ago. And through that, Tim, you mentioned we've done more with this partnership. We've done a lot more. Through that, we've kind of changed the way we're doing things. And now Lisa, Judy, and I have had the opportunity to work together on the most recent projects for the past, I want to say 4 years, Judy, does that seem right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Like formally working on it,
right.
But it seems like forever otherwise.
Yes, we've worked together for a long time, but like on this project, yeah.
So how is it, if people were interested, and we can share the site later, but it's a 3-part series. How did it's such a big topic. I mean, autism and mental health. I mean, like courses upon courses could be taken and books upon books could be written about this. How did you break down so that people could start to understand that intersection?
Well, we have 3 different parts, and the first part is called the Foundations of Autistic Neurology, and that goes through like the major areas where autistic people have differences in their neurology. And so like we talk about the particular style of thinking and the way the autistic brain handles information. Like a lot of people are familiar with processing delays when it comes to autistics. But there's actually 4 areas of information handling in the brain, and that's taking in, processing, storing, and retrieving information. And the brain just does that differently. So we go over that difference. And then also the style of thinking, which in a nutshell is generally literal, concrete, and visual. And under visual, there's a variety of ways. So we go over that. and there's sensory differences, which people are pretty well acquainted with at this point in time. Another thing that happened, like going back to the first question about why did we even do this, as a clinician in practice at the time we started this, I found out from my clients, like some of them, it took them years to access therapy because they would call up clinics and they would say, well, we don't have mental health therapy for adults with autism. That's only for children. And so like I was finding this out from my client. I'm like, what? Like that isn't true. But actually people were giving out that information from different clinics in the area, which was surprising to me. So I just wanted to throw that out there that, autistic people do experience all the same mental health challenges that non-autistic people experience. And it's important for autistic people to understand how to maintain good mental health, just like it is for anybody else. And so how that looks for autistic people might be a little bit different. And so that's what we wanted to address, because it seemed to us that autistic people were not really given that information. And just like so much of what we have, the world is set up to work great for most of the people most of the time. And that's how mental health services are set up too. I mean, it's just a logistics game. You want to serve and help the most people you can. And so we figured out like, this is how to do it. And we do it. But then when autistic folks come through the doors of our clinic, they don't often get services that are a good match. So we set out to address that. And then it's like, well, wait, like let's help prevent people from getting in the door of the clinic in the first place. And so like one example is, like mindfulness is very popular at this point in history, and it's popular because it works. So people keep doing it and they develop more mindfulness strategies. And that works for autistic folks too, but you have to make a few adjustments. Like usually you have to make it visual. And so, just that little tweak makes it accessible to a different neurology. So that's like a very tiny example, but we go through the foundations of autistic neurology in the first of the 3 parts of autistic mental health and well-being, so that people kind of have a place to hang their hat, like as we go on further. So we have lots and lots of examples in that part, and it's all based on autistic neurology. And I realize I'm saying the word autistic a lot, and I just want everyone to know that that's intentional.
Mhm.
I use identity first language, which is the preferred language of the majority of autistic adults at this point in time. And if you're interested in that, please Google it. There's a whole bunch of information out there on why autistic adults prefer identity first language.
Judy, I'm wondering if you could give sort of an example of what you mean by making it visual. I think a lot of people are familiar with some basic counseling techniques and talk therapy or whatever you want to call it. And then I know people on this call are familiar also with people with autism. Can you, like when you say we try to make those things visual for them, can you give us an example of that or help me understand that a bit more?
Well, deep breathing is like something that's used a lot in mindfulness, and you can make that visual like with a YouTube clip, or you can describe it. Like deep breathing is when you take a breath in and your stomach expands. So anyway, it's better if you can see that. So I've trained, done the training in deep breathing so that people know that. And then their visual that they use is a picture with the belly popped out for in, because deep breathing shows that the air goes down into the core of your being. It's not just up in your chest. So that's one quick example. But there's tons of examples. I'm sure Sharon can come up with another one.
Sure. Yeah, I can. So a piece, and if we're speaking, Tim, you asked directly about like therapy. If we're speaking about therapy and how we're going to make that work for autistic clients, we use visuals so much. We use visuals to set up a structure of a session. So maybe we'll do, I have clients that I do this every single time I see them. So first we're going to do a check-in. That's number one. Number two is we're going to rate your anxiety, and we'll use another visual. We'll use an anxiety scale that they can see and they can touch. So number two would be, we're going to rate your anxiety. Number three, anything that came up during the week. Number four, what's our takeaways from today's session? And then number five, what's our plan for next time? And so not just me saying that, but like literally having a written schedule of like what is going to happen during therapy can just, because that's the thing. Anybody coming through a therapist's door, you don't know what to expect if you haven't been in therapy before. And part of what we come up against as therapists, having mostly this population, is a lot of times they have had people, worked with people who didn't understand their neurology and maybe didn't do these things. And so there also might be some trauma from like past quote unquote treatments that we're dealing with. And so part of what we're going to do is we're going to make our treatment as predictable as possible for that individual. We are going to appeal to their neurology, and we're going to keep it the same as much as we can. We're going to put structure in place, and we're going to make it visual.
I love that. That's something I hadn't really thought about before with a number of people that I know that are very visually oriented, and they like that structure and knowing what's coming next and knowing that they've completed something, and that's very comforting. It just helps them be calm.
Absolutely. I think, part of, you asked him like the different parts of the training, and the second part is specifically around like stressors and trauma and autism. And part of the reason why it works so well to have such structure in our therapy sessions is because we know that autistic people have been telling us that the world can feel pretty unpredictable to them. And that may be because of some of the sensory issues that Judy mentioned earlier that we're familiar with now. It can be because of sensory, it can be because of hidden curriculum items. It could be, there's so many reasons why it feels unpredictable. And so the first thing that I want to do trying to become a safe person for this client that's coming through my door is make it as predictable as possible. Yeah.
And that's so helpful. I can speak to that as an autistic person. Because the world is set up to serve most of the people most of the time, like I said before, historically, therapists and teachers and everybody who tried to help autistic people thought, like the gold standard for a long time was to try to get our folks to look indistinguishable from their peers. Like we wanted them to look like that gold standard that we considered normal. Well, we now know that's not so helpful at all. And we know that autistic people need to be honored for who they are and what they want to be in the world. And so that's why it's important to understand the basic underlying neurology. And that's gone over. And then even when it comes to things that are stressors to autistic people and trauma, that can look a little bit different than the way it looks for neuromajority people. If you can imagine living in a world that's too loud, too bright, too fast for your whole life, that produces a trauma response in the brain. We've got research to show that. And so, a lot of people don't understand that the stressors and trauma for autistic folks can look a little bit different than what they do. I shouldn't say different. It's like, it's just expanded. There's more stressors because besides all the ACEs, there's that whole part of living as an autistic in a world that's not made for your neurology, that adds on more layers of stressors. So that's an important part that Sharon and Lisa talk about.
And then I also know that you mentioned this whole sense of it's not necessarily getting help through therapy, but of achieving a sense of well-being.
Right.
Of being physically, mentally well, as Judy was saying, in this world that isn't made for us. So how do you help people to, we talked a little bit about mindfulness, deep breathing. Are there other techniques or examples that you use to help autistic people to achieve a better well-being for themselves?
There is, Tim, there absolutely is. And that's kind of like, I think the third section of that 6-hour training we're talking about right now is that. And yes, mindfulness might be part of it, but it's also part of what we do in the training is just to recognize what Judy has named a couple times already, that the world is made for the neuromajority, and to recognize just how ableist we can be, all of us can be, and the world is. And just recognizing that, and then being able to connect with other people that understand that at the level that you understand it at, or that can challenge you on your own ableism, is part of the mental well-being too. It's being able to connect with other people that are like you, or other people who are going to partner with you and take your hand on this journey of, okay, we know this ableism exists in the world, and how can you be my partner in figuring out how to navigate that together? And so a big, huge part of the well-being is also the connection, is that it's connecting with other like-minded people. That's a big part of it.
I would like to take a short pause here and tell people that you are very welcome to go ahead and ask questions. If you have any questions for Judy or Sharon, you can also put them in the chat, and I will be sure to relay them to Judy and Sharon. I've also put the website up from the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin that has that 3-part series that you can sign up for, that you can register for. Registration rates and the cost are on there. But I find this, Sharon, I was fascinated by the fact that you said that you were working on this like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because you would think that I would realize that, but it just seems recently we've just been, as you guys were saying, I've just been talking to so many people where they go to try to get help, but because they're autistic, they get turned away.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
That they one, either don't have access, or two, someone tries to provide something they're not trained to provide. So how can we make the system better? How can we make it work better for autistic people that also are challenged with anxiety,
Right.
depression, isolation, all these things that people as humans we experience, but we experience them in different ways. How can we help make it all better?
You're asking a huge question, Tim.
Five words or less.
Yeah, we have a 30-hour CEU course,
Yeah, right.
and it wasn't enough time. So,
yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do, Tim. And like the frame of reference that Lisa, Judy, and I come from is that we do not think that all autistic people need to be in therapy. So I'm going to say that again, right? We don't think that. We think that if we are meeting their basic needs as autistic people and not trying them to make them look not autistic, if we are embracing them for who they are and meeting their needs as an autistic person, if we're doing that to start. And so even our training for therapists starts with that. It starts with meeting the person's needs where they are at. After that, after we're meeting their needs, wherever they are in the moment, for like things like, this is mental well-being too, Tim, for things like sensory diet, for things like sleep, for things like connection, all of those things, we get all of those things in place. Then we can do the sort of, ooh, there's still something here that is presenting as an anxiety disorder. It's only after we meet those needs can we do that. And so that's a huge, it was a big question, Tim, but that's like our frame of being, our way of being is to meet those autistic differences where they're at first and meet those needs, and then look what's kind of left over if we're talking about then mental health treatment after that.
and a lot of times, if you clearly see the autism and support it, there isn't anything left over. There isn't anything that needs therapy. Yeah. But if you don't clearly see the autism and support the autism, a lot of things look like, oh my goodness, this is like full-blown OCD, or, it'll look like something like that. But it's just that here's an autistic people living in a world that wasn't designed for them. And nobody is clearly seeing and helping them figure out how to support their autism.
So we do have, it looks like, if I can read your face, Sharon, you're reading the questions in the chat. Yeah. I've gotten really good at reading people on screen, what they're doing. It just total experience, not a talent at all. But how do you recommend that families or individuals find the resources they need for mental health? And then Judy, you just talked about supporting the autism. Mm-hmm. How do we support the autism? So two questions there. Sorry, I moved them all together. My bad.
Well, to support the autism, first you have to clearly see it, which a lot of people don't. Like I always get the question, like, how do you know if it's autism or if it's just a behavior? I always get that. If you have that question, assume it's autism and support it and see what happens. Most of the time the behavior goes away. So anyway, that's how you support the autism, is you have to clearly see it. There's a couple different tools out there that can help you do that. And if you're a clinician and you take the course, you get some of those tools. That's the clinical course that I'm talking about. And the other question about how do you recommend that families or individuals find resources they need for mental health? I think it's important to start in whatever area you live in. Because resources are usually specific to your area. So if you live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you're going to look up the Autism Society that serves the Green Bay area. You're going to look up, what kind of things are there. And usually, if you're a parent, if you ask other parents, which is why I say the Autism Society first, you'll find other parents. You can ask them, like, what have you found helpful? Do you have a resource guide for this area? So start local, and you can branch out from there. Is one bit of information for that.
I would say, I would echo what Judy's saying, start local. And then I think one of my first questions for any prospective provider would be if they come from a neuro-affirming lens. So that's like some mumbo jumbo in there, but that just means that they are aware of ableism and aware of and want to promote autistic and other neurodiverse people just being themselves. And examples of this are just like when we think about treatment goals. And if we have goals that are trying to like change the autistic people and get the autism to not be visible to the world, that's an ableist goal. That's a problem. So that would be my first question. That would be like, do you come from a neuro-affirming lens? And tell me about that. What are your treatment goals like? So that you know that they might be a good match for an autistic person with autistic neurology if they have that. Along with that, neuro-affirming lens, what is your past experience treating people on the spectrum or autistic people? What is your experience with that? Do you have any training in that? Tim asked a question probably about half an hour ago now, like why we did this. When I went to grad school, and it's a while ago now, I don't think autism was mentioned more than once or twice, and I got my master's in counseling, and I think I chose to study it, like I chose to read books, or, it was my choice, but it was not mentioned. And the idea that we would be like counseling autistic clients was not even on the radar. And so going from scratch, the person who wrote that question, sorry, I didn't have your name right in front of me. Going from scratch, I would want to know that. I would want to know what experience they have, what training they have, because just getting fresh out of grad school, hopefully it's mentioned more now in 2023 than it was when I went to grad school. But I'm not sure that it is. So I would just want to ask that question too.
So do you have any ideas about, I know that we have people who their options are really, really limited in who they may have access to, either because of the geography that they live far away from a city center that has a lot of counselors. Hopefully these days they have more access to telehealth. But do you have any ideas on how to help families who may have a counselor that they want to trust and believe in, but don't have that neurodiversity lens? Is it helpful to say, hey, could you watch this training? Are there other resources besides this training that you know of that we can encourage those counselors who this is not going to be their bread and butter because they're out in, Fenimore or something.
Right, right.
How can we help those counselors and those families?
Judy, do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, well, that's why we developed the clinical training that we did, is because so many of our coworkers were coming to us and asking us, and then over time, like people saw us like we knew more than them. And I think it's just we got asked more questions, so we had to learn more. It's not that we set out specifically to do this, but yeah, there aren't a lot of people out there. But just if you're a family member looking for services and you ask the question, like, are you a neuro-affirming therapist? Like, if your therapist doesn't know that, then that opens up the conversation, and maybe they know somebody like that. Or you can ask, like, I'm looking for someone who has who has some experience in diagnosing and treating autistic individuals who might have a co-occurring, mental health condition. Like, we don't know at this point, like, is there anybody in the area that you know of that has experience? Like, I would start there, and I would also ask parents of other autistic kids, like, what they've found, because there's usually somebody knows somebody who did this a couple years ago. Like, you can usually get something if you keep asking. And I'm really sorry that parents have to keep asking, because I think that's wrong, but that's the best we have at this point in time.
Yeah, and I could so totally agree with you, Judy. When there was a time years ago when my son was going into therapy, is we made sure that we set up an appointment with a therapist so that we could check out their autistic lens about, were they truly seeing him with his unique neurology, or just applying psychology on top of it. So I think those questions are really, really important.
Yeah, the diagnosing has nuances when you're working with autistic folks, as does the treatment. But it's not outside of the realm of learning. Like, we all learned it.
Mhm.
And now we have a training so other people can learn it too. So it's not out of the realm of ordinary. The problem to me seems like the practical one, especially in smaller areas and out in, rural communities, is that there's limited services, mental health services, period.
Period.
And there might be one clinic, and that, like, there's 3 therapists and they serve all of everything. And that's really, really hard, because talk about taking a 30-hour training when you might have one client who's autistic, and then maybe they leave therapy before you're even done with the training. So
Right.
Practically, it makes it really difficult. But autistic people aren't less deserving than other people. And so we need to just keep going and shifting forward and trying to make it work. That's part of why we're in this, is because things weren't working. So we're trying to be part of that solution.
And that's why I invited you both here today. 'Cause we want to distribute solutions wider than we can. We do have a question in the chat. If you could maybe explain a little clearer about when you're working with children, that you're helping them develop and work on their goals, but that you're not changing the autism in them, so that you're not. I know it's murky. I can't even explain it really well. So if you can understand anything that the person or myself am asking,
yes,
if you can clarify that'd be great.
I totally understand that, Tim. And I think when I started in the autism field, and I did start years ago, I think it was in the 90s, late 90s, some of our goals for treatment or therapy, Judy said this, I think already, was to make the child, quote unquote, indistinguishable from their peers. And now, so I look at goals like that as being problematic. So goals that are designed to make the child blend in, make them look less autistic, these would be all warning signals to me. Goals that are designed to help them fit in, those would all be problematic for me. Goals that are designed to increase eye contact, I'm trying to think of specific ones that I've actually been part of teams and worked on in the past that are absolutely problematic. So that's the other piece. Go ahead, Judy, go ahead.
Any kind of behavioral goal that the outcome is to make the person look less autistic and to better fit in. That used to be state of the art, because that was the best we knew at one point in time. And so if you're a therapist out there and you're doing that, and just know that things have shifted, and now we've learned ever so much more. And unless you're in the mode of like seeking out, courses and different trainings and workshops, like how would you expect to update your knowledge?
Right.
And that's what's happened. So everybody's stuck in whatever the year was where they learned the bulk of their information about autism.
Yeah.
Like that's just the way it is. You
And Judy,
just
like,
have to keep shifting forward. That's all. So any behavioral goal that's designed to make an autistic look non-autistic, you know what? You can be successful because the autistic person will learn how to mask to meet your goal.
ooh,
And then that confirms that, yes, you were successful with that goal with your client.
I just wanted to name that all of us come to this meeting today with different levels of education, different levels of experience with working with autistic people, right? And I want to say that I worked on these goals. Like these goals that I just said are red flags or bad, like I worked on these goals years ago. And I bet you in 10 years, I might be very embarrassed and ashamed of the goals I'm working on now. Like we learn more and we do better. So I just want to name that. I think with Judy, Lisa, and I, we do have a community and an agreement between the three of us to be like, hey, if I say something that is ableist, let me know because I want to do better. And my friends do that for me. They say like, Sharon, that goal, just check that one, make sure that's really what you want. The other piece I just wanted to name for the person that asked that question is I think that we have this in our clinic for sure. When you are working with children, they're not the ones that are necessarily deciding their goals, right? So they come with parents, they come with grownups attached to them. And at our clinic, that's something we do come up against when we have parents who their goal might be, I just want his life to be easier. I don't want him to stand out. And as a therapist, you are like, oh, at a parent level, I get that. I get that deeply. I feel that deeply. And I take it as part of my job then to do like some education around that, around like, okay, this is what's true about that want and that need, might not necessarily be a best match for our clinic. And this is why. Let's have a discussion about that. Like, let's open up that discussion. But I just wanted to name that when you have kids, it's even harder because they're attached to parents who might not be realizing what the goals they want might mean for their children. And Judy mentioned masking, and that is something we talk about a lot in this training. And if you're not familiar with that, you can look it up, but it really is, autistic people learn throughout their lives to hide behaviors that might cause them to stand out. And that's at a cost. That's at a big cost. And a lot of mental health disorders come out of intense masking and things like that. Yeah.
So I know that we are nearing the end of our time together. We do have one other question with this. So two things to close with. One question about, do you have any insight about what you're talking about adapting therapy with autistic brains? Do you have any evidence or knowledge about how that would work with ADHD type brains, knowing that autism and ADHD can live together in the same person? Is that they can be co-occurring. And then I want to make sure, Sharon, I give you a chance to talk about scholarships.
Perfect.
So any idea on ADHD in relationship to this sort of discussion?
Yep, you can throw it right in there as the basic answer. So when the term neurodiversity first started, it meant autism. And then as time went along, we learned that we call them cousins to autism. And then we learned, like, neurodiversity should just be these different, neurological, the neurological brain types. And so we talk about autism a lot because that's our experience. But it also applies to neurodiversity at large. And then if you're a clinician, there are some nuances to that, which is beyond the scope of, of this meeting right now. But there are some differences. But in general, the big chunks of information apply to neurodiversity.
Right. And to answer to address Tim's second question, so we've been highlighting and talking a lot about this one-day training, which is autistic mental health and well-being. And I just wanted to say that right now, Tim put in the chat, there is a link that you can get to. Right now it's online and it is 6 hours. We are also back finally after about 4 years to doing a full day live. It feels like a big deal just because we haven't done this in so long. And that'll be September 19th, somewhere in Stevens Point. So really central state. Go Pointers, have to say that. So that is on September 19th. So just, you can keep that on your, if you are a person that much prefers to be in person, come play with us on that day. And then the scholarship piece that Tim is mentioning, I'm actually going to read a little blurb that we got from Kirsten
Sharon,
Cooper. Yeah.
Before Tim just posted something about scholarships in the chat, and I think it's not correct information.
Oh
no, I just copied and pasted from their website. Oh, sorry.
The scholarships that Sharon's going to talk about is for the clinical.
Ooh, awesome.
The clinical thing.
If that's okay, Tim, can I talk about that
Please,
just for a minute?
please. Oh, yeah, no, I have a problem with clinicians.
The mental health and well-being. The Autism Society might have a limited number of scholarships for that, but that wasn't our announcement. So I don't know that that's here nor there, but if people are interested, they can check that out. But the Autism Mental Health and Well-being is an on-demand course, meaning that you can sign up for that, and it's an online course. You can take it at your leisure. And then when we first did it, we had Q&As that were live, and those Q&As are taped, so you can watch the tapes of those too.
Yeah.
So that's about the 6-hour online autistic mental health and well-being course, and the live version that is coming September 19th in Stevens Point.
Thank you, Judy.
And then there's a whole second thing that Sharon's going to talk about.
Okay, so that's in one container. I'll just contain it a little bit. That's in one container. And that training is meant for anybody. That is meant for anyone who wants to come. We've had teachers, we've had parents, we've had autistic people, we've had therapists, like anybody who wants to come to that.
A bus driver.
Anybody who wants to come and learn more about autism and mental health. The other container I'm going to put us in right now is the more intensive training we developed out of this need we saw. That is 30 hours of training. It is all online, and it is developed just for mental health practitioners. And so after they complete this, they get a certificate of completion. And in doing the course, they get access to us, like the trainers, for an hour a month, Q&As, so that part is live. And then, like Judy said, this one too has 30 hours of on-demand, so you kind of do it at your own pace. And Tim, this is the one that the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin received a grant from the governor and Wisconsin Department of Health Services. I'm reading this part because I want to get it right. They want to support projects aiming to build the capacity of mental health and behavioral health care workers to more effectively serve diverse clientele. And so what they got was they are preparing to offer the course to 50 clinicians free of charge in 2023. And for that, they can email, and I can put this in the chat, or if you can, Tim, just Kirsten Cooper. You have Kirsten's email at autismgreaterwisconsin.org to be placed on an interest list. So if you are a therapist or know of a therapist who you think would benefit from this intensive kind of level of training, there are these spots. Like I said, 50 people will get trained free in 2023. I do need to do a disclaimer here that the application process will be announced more probably in May. It's coming really soon. And just because of who the Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin serves, preference will be given to clinicians practicing with in the greater Wisconsin area. So that's like the Autism Society is Wisconsin's divided into 3 different parts, and preference is given to the people who are served by this Autism Society. But that's not to say that if you're interested, you should not get your name on that list anyway. Get your name on the list. So
Well,
if you know, go ahead, Judy.
And anyone can take the training. There is a price on it. We're just excited about the scholarships, but we don't mean to say that you can only take it if you have a scholarship. No, anybody can take it from anywhere in the world.
We had that question. We kind of did a little blurby thing on Monday too, and we had that question. And last year we had the training online. It was up and running, and we had trainers from across the United States in with us in our session. So that was lovely to see. Just the reach that it was kind of hitting. It was not just Wisconsin. So we got really excited about that.
Oh yeah, it's not like this is a unique situation in Wisconsin. I think people across the world are struggling with mental health.
Absolutely.
And wellness.
Everybody's got a wait list, right?
Exactly. Well, I do want to go ahead and close this up. That information is in the chat there for people to check out. And I believe I pulled her email address off as kcooper@autismgreaterwi.org. And again, preference will be given to their catchment area, so to speak, is the counties, the areas covered by Greater Autism Society of Greater Wisconsin. Although so we're Green Bay, Wausau area, that sort of area.
Yeah.
But please, like Sharon said, get your name on the list in case some openings come up.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. Any closing comments from either, both, all of you?
I'm just happy that that there's a group of people interested in this topic. So thanks for having us, Tim.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same. I appreciate people taking time just to tune in today and be with us and share this time with us. It's obviously a project that we are super passionate about. And so just appreciate people giving the time in the space and the questions today. Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much for taking time out and joining us. And I will get you the recording as soon as I have it available. I'll try to put together maybe a little resource sheet with the different URLs on them, along with the information on the scholarships, to get those out to the people that have registered that maybe weren't able to join us. So
Perfect.
Thank you both for being here. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.